You, Josh. Amazing. Such nice tunes. Really, really nice Sunday afternoon vibes, everybody. I hope you're having a good time so far. Really nice to have you all as part of this wonderful second edition of Virtual Coffee Festival. Josh will be back after the next speaker, who is Joanna Alm. I'm super excited to have her. We actually met for the first time when my friend and business partner at the time, Erica, went to Sweden, and we were filming a little video, and she was so friendly and so wonderful. She welcomed us to her cafe. We did a little interview, and we had some wonderful coffees together. And since then, we have had a wonderful relationship with her and her wonderful coffee roasting company, Drop Coffee. She has won the Swedish Roasting Championships 3 times. She has placed 2nd, 3rd, and 4th in the World Championships. She has recently launched her own book in Swedish called Manifest for Better Coffee, which will now also appear in German. And she runs Drop Coffee together with her fiance, Stephen Layton of Has Been Fame. And together they have created, she has created, and they continue managing an absolutely spectacular company. Some of the personally favorite cafes in Europe serve her coffee. I'm thinking of Tornquist in Hamburg, thinking of places like Scandinavian Embassy in Amsterdam, and her iconic brown boxes are just a sight to behold, and they're always a sign of quality and passion. And it's very, very wonderful to have her here today as our 3rd speaker. So without further ado, let's get Joanna into this little conversation so I can welcome her as our 3rd speaker. Joanna, if you're there, I know you are, make sure that you turn on your video and your sound so we can see and hear you. And we will be moving on to our 3rd speaker for the day. Hi.
Hi. Hi, Alex.
So nice
hi, everyone. So good to see you. It really is beautiful to connect. Like you have this booked into your calendar, and then, yeah, it's you. I see you there, and I see all of the participants. This is super exciting. And Josh, what vibes? Like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Were you dancing in your living room? Were you shaking?
Oh, you know I did. You know I did. I am Swedish. I have the ABBA blood, so don't you worry. So.
Amazing. Thank you so much for
Fantastic.
taking the time to join us today. I know you're very busy, and you have obviously got so much on your hands as running this wonderful business that you have. So I'm very grateful for you to take the time to join us. I would love, and the participants of this event today would love to hear from you about your company, what inspired you, and what keeps inspiring you every day. And most importantly, today's topic for your segment is the whole question of Omni roasting, because as you know, and many of us know, it's kind of a bit of a controversial and divisive topic, with some people saying that Omni roasting is not for them. It has to be filter or espresso, or they won't drink it. And I would love to hear from you as one of the pioneers of this philosophy. What made you make that decision in the beginning? And sometimes maybe also, how do you convince someone who is a naysayer to join your Omni roasting camp?
Yeah,
so
definitely, Alex. You have a lot of the questions in there that I'm not trying to convert anyone or trying to, but I also want to share, because I see a lot of benefits with it, but for me it's more of a philosophy and a methodology that I'm using to perceive something. So I did a short presentation, if you would like to share my screen as well.
Absolutely. So we're gonna give you full attention. I'm gonna disappear for the next few minutes. We're gonna allow you to share your screen. So you should have a button at the bottom of your screen to share your presentation. Can you see it? Yeah. Are you ready to go?
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you so much, Alex.
Yeah. All right. Looking forward to listening to your conversation. Let's go.
Yes. There we go. So everyone, I'm super happy to be there here. This is a beautiful opportunity to meet up, and to otherwise we try to meet a few times in the world every year, and this is by far more environmental friendly. And I hope to not get too geeky today. Feel very happy to ask questions afterwards, and I will follow them up all I can. So I made a short presentation on Omni Roast for you. Alex already introduced me better than I deserve. So, but yeah, I am the managing director of Drop Coffee Roasters here in Stockholm. I'm sitting here outside of Stockholm in my countryside house that is my actual house at the moment, sharing with you. I am also sitting on the Coffee Roasters Guild, or I just cycled off, and in the Sustainability Advisory Council. But more than anything, this is only about roasting and the philosophy that I am using and applying to our coffee roastery, Drop Coffee. So we are going to talk about what is Omni Roast, why I Omni Roast, and ways that you potentially can Omni Roast if you want to. And then hopefully we are going to have another like 20 minutes or so, depending on how talk active I am, to do some Q&A. So please, if you have questions regarding curves or ideas, take a note and we will chat afterwards, because I want to talk to you. I get tired of hearing my own voice. So my history with Omni Roast is really like way before it was a terminology or anything at all called Omni Roast. So I started doing it. I stopped doing blends in 2009, same year as we opened. And in 2010, we also decided not to roast differently for any brewing method. And this for me, I've always been like about, I love clarity in a cup. That's what I really, really dig. And I really don't like ashy flavors or burnt bitter notes. So it's more coming from that all of those flavors that I do want in the cup, and which flavors do I not want in the cup, and what do I hand over as a roaster to the barista. So also, as Alex said, he said it was a pretty cafe. This is not a pretty picture, but I just want to show you that what we are doing is that where is the bryggkaffe? It means filter coffee in Swedish. And there you have all of our coffees, but we also do 2 days coffee that you see to the right, where all of our coffees are continuously swapped. So every single coffee kind that we roast, all single origin, of course, are being served both as 2 days coffee on batch brew and on espresso. And the baristas that we have are, absolutely phenomenal. We are logging so much TDS, and now with technology, how we can sync this data and together with the roast curve and really try to understand how well the coffees are extracting, how they're tasting. Every single time when I walk into the cafe, I want to order an espresso and an espinade brew on the same coffee and see if I have all of the flavors available in both of the cups. So that is 2 days coffee. And very often we serve the same coffee on both espresso and batch brew, but also for the brew on demand menu. And if you look at espresso, like here's the thing, that if you look at, this is not a Charme cup for those of you, I assuming everyone following Alex's great work is in specialty coffee and high-end specialty coffee. And I would definitely say that this is not a cup that appeals to many of us. It's a dark espresso roast that we got taught, like Italy was struggling a lot with money and introduced dark roasted cheaper coffee to us as a drink called espresso. And this is a drink that I, 20 years, got introduced to me as this is an espresso. This is what people are expecting when they order an espresso. They want something dark, they want something strong, they want something, a punch in the face. And yeah, it does have a stronger brew ratio, and we are using higher pressure, but it doesn't need to be dark. It doesn't need to be like flavors hidden and not showcasing the full profile that the coffee has. So this is a coffee that got sold to me, and with my own business, I'm feeling that's a product that I do not want to supply. I don't want to pass this product on. I'd rather do something else. I know it's a massive market for this product, and I also want to acknowledge that, and that's good, and it is a market for every coffee, and so, but it's nothing that's appealing to me as high-end specialty coffee, what I want to do with my business. And like, obviously, it's so much more, like it's so many more layers. It's not about like dark, medium, light, Omni. It's so many levels to this. I would absolutely say with Omni Roast, no, we can never get a dark coffee. So of course it would not taste good as filter. So, but I also want to touch a little on this presentation. I do want to touch on why we aren't tweaking anything at all to get into either espresso and filter coffee. So I want to dig into that and a little, like we're going to touch a little on curves, but I should try not to get too stick in curves. This is a fun, good tunes event, and we should keep it like that. But I still want you to understand a little how I'm thinking about my roasting philosophy. So imagine a coffee that's been absolutely brilliantly grown, processed and dried and packed up and shipped to us. That's just like, wow, this is absolutely excellent. This is the product that we do want. That product I want to highlight at its absolute most. I think most of the specialty coffee roasters would agree on this. It's not rocket science, but I don't want to hide anything. Like, I'm buying so good green coffees that everything that coffee is, I highly respect, and I really, really want it all to be in there, or otherwise I should buy a slight different green coffee. So the roasting theory that I apply is to buy outstanding green coffees. We're working with relationships, we're working with sustainability spreadsheets and impact reports, but they are stunning. They are absolutely excellent. And with the privilege of buying these coffees, they are also coffees that I really want to present the most possible of, not just make a really good product of. I want to present every single note, every single tune, yes, that coffee has. So keywords for me as well with all of those coffees. I visit a producer myself, and I see all of those coffees, how they're being harvested, and happy to talk a lot more about that, and easily do, but I should not do that at the moment. But when the coffee actually is landing in a roastery, my goal at the roaster are the following keywords that you can see on the screen now. That's clarity, vibrancy, no green notes, no ashy notes, like nothing that's being sandy or bitter per se of the roasting. But also the last one that I'm touching a lot of is a lot that has to do with Omni Roast, that I want to present all the potential flavors that I have in there. So to describe it a little bit further, I want you to picture this picture. Imagine this being on your TV screen, and you sit there with your remote control. I should probably rather say imagine this is a picture on your Instagram, but let me be old school. And we're sitting there with this on our TV screen. We see this beautiful picture, and we can, as a roaster, we can change this picture, right? We can use the lighter up, the sharpness, all of the settings on our screen to adjust that. So you can have a coffee here that is lacking development and lacking nuances. You see, like it was a beautiful, you saw a picture, pretty and colorful. The picture was from the very beginning. And here we have done some things we're lacking all development and all nuances. And I'm not going to dig too much into those curves because I don't know how big you can see them. But more or less, you can see a coffee that has a really high charge temperature, but losing a lot of energy, and we fully do not develop the coffee. Then you have another example of an unstructured and unbalanced cup. You know, everything is just sharp and nothing is balancing. I'm not talking about the Kenyan coffee where the flavors actually meet and they are all building up in a crazy symphony in high acidity, high. So I'm not talking about raw coffee here. I'm talking about when flavors do not meet and it simply becomes sharp. And often I find this when I've done a curve that's way too sharp, way too quick. So heaps of energy and just like runs off. And then we have this one, underdeveloped and astringent. You see that, but it's just like, oh, I can barely not, oh, it's something green in there and it's something yellow in there. What's going on there? And I pulled an example of a high charge temperature and where the coffee just dies because you want to increase the development time of the coffee. So when we talk about roast for brewing method or not, what's called Omni roast now. So when we talk about should we really roast it different for cowboy coffee, for espresso coffee, for mocha master, but most commonly it is espresso that's standing out. I see so many people just doing this. They are tuning it down. It's going to be so loud with a high pressure and everything that just like, let's take it down a little bit. And I think this has to do a lot with the picture we were given from the very beginning. The first picture, you remember the dark, Italian roast. We don't want to use because Italian has some of the best roasters in the world. So, but that dark style coffee. Many, when you ask what you're doing differently for espresso, they are saying, I'm leaving it a little bit longer, I'm stretching it out a little bit, or taking it a little bit dark. And that can still be a really, really beautiful picture, but often you can see that the whole potential of all of the flavors that you saw in the picture are just tuned down a tiny bit. But then you can also do this. Like here is where we are in specialty coffee right now. We have so many phenomenal roasters that are choosing to roast different for espresso, but some of the part in the espresso are being more highlighted than the actual whole picture. So, and I don't want to argue which picture that's better, that one or this one, but it's more about myself and my philosophy that I do want to achieve this. I want to show you everything this coffee has, and I want to see it as transparent and pure as I possibly can, and that's how I want to hand it on to the baristas. So it also is a lot about that where the technology and where the knowledge is today with baristas is absolutely phenomenal. And I do not think that we need to hand over a product that's easier to work with or something like that. Of course, maybe on a bigger scale, but if we're only focusing on high-end quality, I do think that a barista, or I know how our baristas are working, and they are excited to see that, whoa, we have so much acidity to work with on this one. And now come this one, so Bolivian Caturra, that's mainly cacao nibs. How do we work with this one? And they are so skilled. Like, trust them and let them do their damn thing that they are better than anyone at. So let all the coffee be different. Like, let every single farm, every single producer, every harvest is different, and let them be different. So, and of course, this comes a lot with cupping all the coffees as they are, brewing it as filter coffee, brewing it as espresso, making sure you take flavor notes, making sure you read TDS. And I can tell you, so we started doing this in 2010, and this was more of a vision back then. And I'm not saying I'm I'm nailing it right now, but I know it's working. Like I really, really, really know it's working, and it's working every week with every coffee that we are letting out, that the coffees can extract fully. But this has taken so much work, and it also is still today. I am like, oh, why does that one extract a little bit less and a little bit more, and continuously updating our roast profiles to that. So of course, try every coffee in every way if you do want to Omni roast. And how do I make sure that the coffee is actually extractable? Extractable is the word, right? When I Omni roast, yeah, that's just about logging. Make sure you have all of that TDS, but also use your toolbox. Like, what can you impact? What can you do? Combined with a lot of logging and your methodology. So there are so many roads that I choose not to take, and I set standards, and nowadays you can set individual goals in your road system and so. And for example, one extreme that I have is that I get a red alert if we would try a profile with over 1 minute and 5 seconds development. And that's not because we shouldn't do it and should never try it and should never experience it with it, but it's because we're finding with the way that we're trying to present the flavors in the coffee, we find it so much better to roast heaps during the actual, like use a lot of energy during the actual profile. So here I pulled instead of just being talk, you can look a little on this one. This is a Honduran coffee that I pulled out to show. It has a fairly low charge temperature. This is all in degrees Celsius, and it's complicated to share screens. All of our probes are different, and everything is different on my roaster and with my increased drum speed, for example. So it's really tricky to compare roasts, but I still wanted to show you a curve from how it looks right now in the roaster. So here we have a 16 kilo batch, an 18.5 kilo batch. We're using a lot of energy after 30 seconds, giving a lot of heat and letting the coffee run. And I can dig into that one more, but first I want to show you on the, you have the readings, you have the cupping, you have the batch brew over there, and I also found it as espresso. You can find it as well, and all of them are extracting well and are sharing very similar roast notes, no matter which brewing method it is, because the flavors are in the coffee and we managed to get them out. So all of this is, of course, to get to know the potential of your green coffee a lot. Like we talk about pre-shipments or cupping at origin when that's possible, but also arrival samples and actual landing samples, and knowing fully what does this raw coffee have and work with that. And almost every week I would say that I find myself like wanting to increase 0.5 degree or higher the airflow with O2. You know, there are those small tweaks that you need to do to not just be extraordinarily happy with the coffee, but with the goal of trying to present all potential flavors. You need to work on it all of the time, and see if it isn't more available. So going back a little to talking about how we're actually roasting, how we're applying Omni roast, I find it if I have a too high charge temperature, the coffee easily gets bitter, but if it's too low, it gets so sensitive and I just don't develop the coffee at all. So And then there is airflow, of course. You can, yeah, depending so much on your machine, but I do believe in adjusting the airflow for at least every single coffee that you have and every batch size that you use. We are adjusting it as well on the curves, but I live in Sweden with 4 very strong seasons. And in simplified, I would say that if I have a too low airflow, the coffee gets very like more cloudy and not as much clarity in the cup. While on the other hand, if I'm using way too much airflow, it's easy that I get a too sharp flavor in the cup. And this is all very general speaking, like it's tricky to dive into. It also is that airflow is of course causing a high pressure onto the beans, and having a too high airflow, I'm struggling to get the heat into the bean as easily and impact with the heat on the coffee. So it simply can come out as underdeveloped. It's a too high airflow to get in. And also you're adding cool air to the system. So cup it blind, always cup a lot, always take notes when you cup. Compare the notes that you bought the coffee with together with what you actually are getting in the cup. And the same like when you brew espresso and when you do a filter. Yeah. And let every single coffee be unique. Let them be its full, what it is this year, what it has, what it open up more and more as week on week. And also when it's starting to fall, present it as its absolute most. And yeah, look yourself in the eyes and see, can I not get out even more flavors in this cup? And it can be crazy flavors. It can be lingonberry, as we like, very cranberry-like here in Sweden. We also have flavors as hopping beer, astringent tea, you know. But I strongly believe in presenting those coffees at its most and with everything they have and they hold and that the producer has given to me. So I think that's it. And very much is not about it. This is the one way of doing it. This is one way that I prefer doing this because it keeps me on my toes. And I love fruit espresso. I love sweetness, clarity. This is something that suits me extraordinarily well. But I understand that it's not the only way to do it. But it's one path and it's one option. And it's something that keeps my passion alive. And yeah, and you should find the roast styles that, you know, keeps your passion alive. Thank you.
All right. Sound? Do we have sound? Amazing. All right. Joanna, thank you so much. You can unshare your screen so we can have a nice conversation and get some questions from myself and from the audience. I am so thrilled to have you here today. Your presentation was wonderful, and I loved that analogy with the picture of the flower, because it really showcases exactly what it is that you guys do as roasters. You know, you get a beautiful product, and then it is your job to find that perfect sweet spot where the coffee is at its most beautiful and ripest and sweetest. So I wanted to dive into something that I spoke with the guys of La Cabra some time ago when I did a live Q&A with them, because they also do Omni roasts. And one of the things that you said as well is, you know, you give the barista a raw product, or actually not a raw product, it's already a finished product, but it is then up to them to find that perfect way to extract all those beautiful flavors, whether it's filter or espresso. So I still get a lot of people asking about, you know, saying that Omni roasts are generally more developed and that they don't taste as good with filter brew methods. But it's obviously a choice of, you know, you want to find that perfect sweet spot that every coffee has. And it is then up to the barista to extract that. How did you in the beginning kind of convey this message to people? What was your kind of like argument to say, hey, this is a better way?
I'm still not sure it is. Like I
I would hope that you're convinced of your own methods.
No, like I love doing it this way, and I feel super happy this way. But should I, like when I do roasting consultations, so it's absolutely not everything I praise. I think everyone needs to have their methods that are working. And I can tell you in the beginning, no, our coffee was tasting okay on filter, but it was a little green on espresso, you know?
Yeah.
And also the way that we have adopted how we are, like now, like most of the coffee we are using on a 1 to 2 to 2 ratio in the espresso, and it gets really fruity and juicy, but also the chocolate coffee are getting that. Like I don't know, I don't sit on all of the answers for every roast curve that others are doing, but I know that with the broad portfolio that we are doing on like chocolatey, fruity, crazy, high acidity, lower acidity, and it certainly is working. Like I look at the filter coffees just with that critical question that I kind of hear that are like, yeah, but could it be better as filter coffee? And a real tasty filter coffee, and no, I have it just where I want it for both of them. And of course I fail, and of course I tip over sometimes and like, oh no, you know. But then what is then is that goes for both filter coffee and for espresso. So on both of them, I want to step back.
So I would love to hear. So you were very influential in the sort of Nordic roasting scene, and a lot of people look at Nordic roasters as a sort of, you know, idol or leading example of how you should be roasting coffee, especially if they're coming from more of a darker roast background. So for example, you saw a lot of roasters from southern countries, you know, I'm thinking of people like Nomad, Gardelli, you know, but also the Barn, you know, people like that were always kind of moving away from their local culture and what is common in those countries. I mean, you know, Greece, Italy, Spain, they have very dark roasted coffees, as you mentioned in the beginning of your presentation about Italian espresso. So I find it really interesting. But how do you think somebody can, you know, successfully move away from what is common in their sort of culture to work with something like what you do without estranging the public and sort of like, you know, almost like disenfranchising the customers?
No, I do think like still the way that Drop Coffee is doing it on the Swedish market, we are absolutely too wild, it's too crazy idea, and it's too vibrant, and it's too, you know, so and also price sensitivity. So it's not that, yeah, everyone in Sweden do love super fruity acidic coffee, even if I think that there are with the food and beverage and people interested in wine and can see this in wine also understands it in coffee. But I think it's, yeah, we're spoiled with drinking heaps of filter coffee. So we're very used to that. And we can present many different coffees with totally different taste profile. While Swedes in general we're only buying only buying Arabica and roasting it fairly well. So like they recognize that product already as a beverage. And then it's just, but of course we need to do it a lot, like maybe even more differential compared to the rest of the market. But otherwise, I mean, it's also beautiful that you have different culture, that you have different brewing method. I'm thinking about Italy, I'm thinking about Ethiopia.
Turkish coffee, for example, you know.
Sorry?
You could also think of Turkish coffee, for example.
Oh, God, yeah, you know? Absolutely.
I would love to hear something about flavor profiles. So you just mentioned in the last part of your presentation that you should always be cupping and comparing what you taste in your own cupping session versus what the roaster communicates in terms of flavor profiles. Sorry, I keep looking at the screen because that's where I see you, but I should be looking at the camera. All right, so there you are. But obviously there's one thing that is quite unique. So when you describe the coffees that you taste as a Swedish roaster, for example, you mentioned in your slide, I saw lingonberry, which is a very particular fruit that is not widely available in other countries. So how could you as a person who lives, maybe, for example, who lives in Turkey, or somebody who lives in the United States and gets your coffee, how can they try to understand what it is that this coffee is supposed to taste like if they don't know the flavor descriptor?
Mm. Now, of course, we need to use a language that are more global and more taste factors that we share, while the SCA flavor wheel and counterculture was created to share more, to not be all my own private preferences. But also that is tricky, because we all come from different ideas of what is medium and high acidity. What I've done is that I'm working with, so both on wholesale price list and also on our menu, we are saying like comfortable, curious, adventurous, to trying to say more like where you're heading. And also I'm working, I believe, a lot in multi-perceptional flavors, so that you're impacted by what color something is. Like same when you understood about the picture, like, yeah, that makes sense. It is a bit the same about colors. So for example, you can see a coffee that's really sweet often is associated with red. So we are also working with colors on the coffee to describe it. Yeah. And then you can say that many that want something more chocolatey for espresso, or more comfortable, they know where to look. So
wonderful. So why don't we start with some questions from the audience, because everybody is super interested in finding out more. Michael, why don't you start us off with the first question from the audience?
So what do you think at that point, that people at home don't have the equipment to make a good espresso? And that's why roasters offer an espresso roast with less acidity?
Okay, I'm not sure if you caught that, but I'm just going to repeat the question. Who is the question from?
We have an anonymous attendee.
Okay, we have an anonymous attendee who asked this question. So if you're not as well equipped, let's say, to have a home espresso machine, how can you basically create espresso with, what was it, with less acidity?
Yeah.
With less acidity at home, maybe using some other tools, or how can you get that sort of espresso flavor out of your coffee? Is that question clear? I'm not sure if it's clear. So can you just repeat the question, just to be clear?
When you don't have opportunity to go to your roaster and make to your coffee place and make a good espresso, what you can do at home?
Okay,
so this kind of flavor.
Okay, I get the question now. So if you have, if you normally go to your local cafe, and for example, a very relevant question during lockdowns, when people were not actually able to go to their local cafe, how can you recreate the sort of espresso flavor that you might really like at home, maybe using some tools that you might have at home? Do you have any suggestions there?
Yes and no, I guess. Like I do think, for me, it's in general very much like, unless you are very wealthy and can afford to have a really good espresso machine, but also don't forget a very good grinder. And also it's going to take some time to dial in a coffee. And if you're just going to brew one coffee, it's a very, very expensive way of doing it. I would say for the hairdresser and for espresso, I normally go out, So I wouldn't per se like, invest in some cheaper machines, but saying that so much is happening on the market. But I do like a stronger AeroPress as well. Like I really, really do. I think that it's never going to be an espresso ever, but it definitely is going to give you, that intense binded flavors to each other. And I'm also a big spokesperson for cowboy coffee that is a little bit stronger, and that you brew in a pot, steeping over a fire, or in your home on the stove. So
without actually removing the grounds, so they just end up sitting in there in the coffee, and you.
There is a little sieve, and obviously you may get some in the bottom of your cup, but you can actually get a little more punch to it and a little more filling taste profile.
Wonderful. All righty, let's go to the second question that we have from the audience.
So what is your opinion on the continuing rise and development of electric roasters such as Belvedere?
Okay, we have a question here that is about electric roasters like the Belvedere. What do you think about those?
I think the roasting technique is going so fast forward, and is that for roasting at home, or I didn't hear which one he was asking for?
I don't think it was specified. I think it was just a general question about electric roasters in general. You know, what do you think about them?
Yeah, I do like them. Everyone I worked on been really good, and there are many that are playing a lot with airflow, which I'm a big fan of, like talking about clarity and vibrancy, and I think those are really good. It's hard to specify, like I think that, for example, and just having, if it's even an electronical ikawa at home, for example, those are beautiful products, but is it, of course you can never like dial them in as much as you would on your big
commercial roaster.
production roaster that you can control everything on. So
okay, all righty. Do we have another question?
Of course, plenty.
Plenty.
Challenges in processing and marketing of Omni Roast.
Okay, so this is actually going back to a little bit of what I said in the beginning. You know, what do you see as the sort of maybe challenges in marketing Omni Roast to somebody who comes into your store and says, oh, I drink filter coffee or I drink espresso coffee, and your baristas or yourself might say, well, actually we have this coffee which is for both, so you can use it with any roast brew method that you might have available. What is the sort of challenge that you might have in convincing? I think I already sort of asked that question earlier, but just to go back to this, what is your kind of like go-to answer to for these people?
I think I try not to make it so the real answer would be that there is a specific espresso roast, you know. I'm very relaxed and comfortable in that. Now I know those coffees fit for two, like for both or all methods that you want to achieve. But of course, if you're looking for something like more talking about the coffee's character itself and what's the origin of the coffee, what's the flavor profile, and also I always mention like, you know, we're roasting like light to medium, so it's not gonna be any ashy notes, and it's not gonna be. And also for espresso, I find it more important to actually communicate brewing recipes, for example. So if people are gonna brew it at home, to make sure like, okay, pull it finer, or make sure that you're going up towards 30 seconds on this one. It's not gonna be and I find it like. Of course, it's not for maybe not for the whole supermarket but I mean, it's just one idea that you should do it for espresso, and I have an idea not to roast different for espresso. So I don't find it, it's coffee. It's like I don't
have to have an open mind, right? At the end of the day, people just have to have an open mind and just be willing to try something different. And I think most of the time you'll find that people actually, once they discover your way of roasting and they find the right tools to extract those beautiful coffees, they'll just be hooked.
Yeah, I think it is like either you like it or you don't, you know.
Exactly. I would love to do a quick poll. We have prepared a poll for our attendees. I would love to hear who out there is a fan of Omni Roast and who isn't. I think it's just an interesting temperature check to do at this stage.
People know who Omni roasts. Like, I never communicate that we do.
All right. Michael, do we have a poll? We have a poll. All right. So let's see. I just had to quickly check what my suggested answers were. We're going to give everyone a few seconds to answer this question. And I'm just very curious to hear what the audience thinks about Omni Roasting. I personally have had a lot of conversations with Coffee Vine subscribers, who said, oh, you're sending out way too many Omni Roasts, so we don't really appreciate those so much. And I think it was very important actually to have this conversation with La Cabra a few months ago, where we discussed this in detail, and I always refer back to this conversation when I have questions from customers, because it is, at the end of the day, you are, as a barista, you're not necessarily just given a toolbox from the roaster, but you have to have your own toolbox, and then you need to use your own tools in order to extract those beautiful flavors that you as the roaster are providing. And sometimes you might not have the right tools, and you have to just maybe find a way to adjust your toolbox a little bit, to add something new or take something out in order to get there. And it's always a very, very interesting conversation. So I'd love to hear who thinks Omni roasting is the right way forward. Let's see what the result is.
Rude, Alex.
All right. Okay, so we have a winning answer. People think that they agree somewhat, so we still have some people who are not 100% convinced. So that's an interesting one. Okay, let's take the poll off the screen so we can see Joanna again. All right, so it's kind of we still have some work to do on this front.
I think it's absolutely fine that people don't, but I also want, keep open-minded and more focus on the raw coffee and what's the product that we get from the beginning. And
absolutely, wonderful.
We have a little time, but we have so beautiful questions.
Okay, we still have some questions. We don't have so much time left, so let's go to the next question.
So let's try to keep 1 minute to each question, and we will try to...
Okay, we're going to try and answer as many questions as we can in a short amount of time.
Okay.
Question from Luisa. How do you decide if a raw coffee fits with your style of roasting? Do you have standing relationships with certain farmers?
Okay, so this is a really interesting question because I know that you have very close relationships with your farmers. But how do you decide whether a potential new coffee or a potential new farmer has the right raw material that would fit with your philosophy, that you can actually then also give this magical finishing touch to make it this beautiful coffee? How do you decide that?
So I visit all of the producers we are buying from, and if I haven't visited, I can't buy. So that means a lot of coffee I cannot buy. And on top of that, we also have heaps of samples that I try to cup as many as I can of them being sent to us of people who are interested in selling. And short answer. This is also internal, but we are only buying coffees over 87 at the moment. I'm not saying that's the only way to do it for sustainability and so in the future, but we know that that's working with the profile and the philosophy we currently have. But then it also needs to be somebody who's keen to work on sustainability and something we're clicking on about that. But of course, it needs to be pre-shipments and samples, and you agree on it, and you agree on price, you agree on everything. But it's not, of course, it can go wrong sometimes, or, but it depends on quality, yes.
All right. Now let's go to the next question.
How do you find the sweet spot of the bean for various brewing methods?
Okay, I think this is an interesting one because it's kind of in line with what I said earlier. How do you find the sweet spot? So when you try to extract that perfect flavor from that coffee, how do you find that sweet spot using different brew methods? So you mentioned earlier you sometimes like the AeroPress for a sort of replacement espresso. I know that you guys were actually one of the first cafes in Europe to work almost exclusively with the Kalita. So how do you find that perfect sweet spot if you're trying to brew your coffee at home?
If I know I have roasted a coffee like how I imagined it and it's cupping well, but I don't manage to brew it at home, I do, you know what you do. You put your gloves on and just try to tune in different ways. In particular, I always start with two extremes. I rarely go under 94 degrees in brewing temperature, as I do roast as light as I do. It takes more heat and energy. There are other sweet spots as well you could use, but to simplify it, I would stay there. And then I brew two extremes, and I see what they have, just like I would at the roaster, and I'm sure that the producer would do as well. Just what does it have? What am I missing? And how do I get there later?
Yeah.
No.
How much trial and error is there involved to achieve that sweet spot?
And how much trial and error is there involved in achieving that sweet spot? I actually remember vividly when I was with you in Stockholm, and you actually invited Erica and I to join a cupping that you had prepared for a production roast. And I would love to hear, how is it that you find that sweet spot? How do you decide exactly where that sweet spot is
I think it's equally important, like roaster is equally much about being a phenomenal cupper as it is being about a hands-on roaster. Like you need to really understand the coffee, and if the flavors aren't there, you need to go back to the roaster, you know? And you need to get that knowledge and understand that, oh, no, it lacks some vibrancy here. It's not clean enough. It's not sweet enough. What do I do? What am I missing? And it's really easy to make coffee, which I didn't mean it like that, but it's easier to make a coffee tasty than to make sure to present it, you know, with even more and even more it has. It would be very easy to stop at the point and settle down, while I think that you can always increase. You can always do better, right?
Yeah.
So.
Amazing. All righty. I think we're done with questions. We are out of time. Joanna, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you here today. It is always wonderful to hear from you and to listen to your story. You have your book is coming out in German. Is that right? Is that already published, or is it?
It is true. It's being translated at the moment and going to print. So that.
Can we also expect an English version anytime soon?
Yeah, I hope so. In the process,
right.
so that's all I can say. So
we'll keep an eye on your website and on your Instagram.
Phenomenal, and I'm so happy for everyone listening. And yeah,
it has been an absolute pleasure, and we're so thrilled to have you here today. Thank you for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. I can see it's sunny in Sweden, so hopefully you'll be able to enjoy nature. We're going to move on. We're going to go back to Josh with some amazing disco tunes. And I want to thank Joanna and everyone else who's been with us so far, and all of you participants who are amazing at asking questions and being involved. It's really, really cool. So we're going to take another 15-minute break, and then we'll be back with Maxwell Colonna Dashwood and afterwards with Dan Fellows for the last two segments of our presentation today. So see you guys in a moment.